This is a good problem to understand how the REST controlling methods work in Spring Boot. So what I did was I was following a tutorial, and initially I had a simple method to display a student object which is based on a Pojo class student with basic details like his ID, his name, his email, his date of birth, and his age. So initially I had this function inside the application uh, source code directly. But then that is not a good design. So I segregated that application code, and now the application just has the main function, and there is a separate student controller class which has this method. I can name it anything, does not matter. So what it does is it returns a new student object with its following details, which we can see if we hit that particular endpoint. The thing is, in the tutorial, this request mapping was applied at the class level, not at the method level. But what I do is when I see a tutorial, I first try to understand it, and then without seeing, I try to do it myself. And in that process, I made this mistake. But the interesting part is, even though I did something different from the tutorial, I got the same result. So now if I just hit this endpoint, which is API v1 student, let's say I go to this endpoint and I still get the expected result. So I thought I had a conversation with ChatGPT that how was this possible. So then I got to know that this request mapping is by default, and generally it's a good practice to apply it at the class level because it defines that for all the methods of this class, this is the default route. So this is the starting uh, path from where Spring Boot will consider requests, right? So, but if we apply it at the method level, it is not syntactically wrong or it is not grammatically wrong, but we can do that. But then what it means is that for this specific method, this is the starting point. So if we hit the API at this point, we will see the results assuming that we are uh, applying for a get HTTP request, because the default, if you do not mention whether you want this function to be triggered in case of like get or post or put, if you don't mention, the default is get. So that's why what is happening when I run this application.java, uh, then the Spring Boot application gets triggered, and one of the classes I have in my project is this class. It is a REST controller, so it will start looking for any kind of request. So if I hit this endpoint, and then it knows that in this function, whatever it does, I have to do it. So it returns this thing as a list, and so you get this list. So it was a mistake on my end. So actually, should have what I should have done was take this and attach it here, and still I'll get the same result provided like I can label it as git mapping. So let's see if when I remove it, what happens. So for now, to be on the safer side, just do in the copybook way, get mapping. And now I should get the same result. So let's save this file and rerun application.java. Okay, so application.java is rerunning. Yes. And now if so here it says that its server is on, it's running in this port, and now I'm hitting this particular endpoint and still I'm getting the correct result. But see, even if I remove this git mapping annotation, I think it should run because default is get, right? So now if I rerun the application, why am I rerunning? So that the new code gets loaded. Okay, okay. So I think this get mapping is necessary. If I don't mention this get mapping annotation, um, like it's like if you mention that this function is responsible to execute at an endpoint, uh, at least that is necessary. Now, whether it's get or post, if you don't mention it, default by default it takes get. But here I have not mentioned anything, and so I've just kept a function, and that's why I think that it is not executed. And when I hit this endpoint, so before why it executed, because uh, I mentioned an annotation of request mapping, like when some request comes at this endpoint. When somebody hits this endpoint, please do something. And what thing it by default it does get. But here I have not said anything, and so I guess because of that, it is showing. It is saying that this endpoint is not known, and so you are seeing this is a fallback. Like so, it is a default. Like when any error happens, you are redirected to this part, maybe. So better get back to safety. I think now it is. This is standard copybook what we should do. So it was a good knowledge for us, for me particularly, and to remember as recording this.